As we have studying the plant kingdom, typically the cryptograms, we have completed the algae. After the algae, we have completed the bryophytes, and now we are going to see the pteridophytes. As you know, the evolution is progressing from the algae to the bryophytes and from bryophytes to the pteridophytes. So, first time we are going to see a well-developed advanced plant, because whatever plants we see, most of them are the angiosperms in our surrounding. Okay. Then, second most plants which are found in our surroundings are the gymnosperms. And after that, what we found in the majority in the tree habit are the pteridophyte. Okay, algae is there, but it is not found in the tree habit. Okay, they are not the bigger plants. So above the uh, pteridophytes is the bryophytes. Then behind the bryophytes is the algae. So evolution is like that, from the algae to the bryophyte, from bryophyte to pteridophyte, from pteridophyte to gymnosperm, from gymnosperm to angiosperm. So particularly when we study the pteridophytic group, what we are studying the intermediate link between the bryophyte and the gymnosperms. So it is very much important to understand the pteridophytes in very detail, because these are very interesting plants and they are connecting link between all these groups, because pteridophytes are the first vascular plants which live on the land. As we have already discussed about the bryophytes, that they can live on the land, but at the same time their fertilization is dependent on the water, and hence we are calling them as the amphibians of the plant kingdom. But first time on the land, independently on the land, living the plants are called as the pteridophytes. That is, they can survive without the water because they possess the well-developed system of the roots. Okay. So in this particular video lecture, we are going to focus on the all aspects of the pteridophytes. Okay, how they are, what are their structure, how they reproduce, how they got classified, what is their habit, what is their habitat, how they look, how they differentiate their body, what is sporophytic generation, what is gametophytic generation, and how they alternate with each other. Okay, all these things we are going to understand in this particular video lecture. All right, now consider the syllabus. We are doing the paper 1 in that chapter 2, that is the cryptogams. We are here at the pteridophytes. Okay, P is silent here, and the pronunciation is pteridophytes. So in the pteridophytes, we have to study structure and reproduction from the evolutionary point of view. Okay, and finally we are going to understand its ecological and the economic importance. All right, now let us consider the introductory slide for the pteridophytes. See, these are the first true land plants. Now please understand these words, because these are very important words. They are the first true land plants. Because why we are calling it true land plants? Because first land plants which came out of the water were the bryophytes. We have discussed the bryophytes, but they are typically dependent on the water for their fertilization. That is why they has to grow around the water bodies. But first time the plants who were independent of the water bodies are the pteridophytes, and that is why we call pteridophytes as the true land plants, because they possess the well developed systems of the roots and they can absorb the water from the soil. So that is why they don't require the water bodies for their supply of water, and that is why these particular pteridophytes can live on the land. But on the other hand, the bryophytes, which do not possess any type of root, and hence they have to live around the in or around the water areas in order to absorb the water. Right. So these are the first true land plants in the evolution of the plant kingdom. And the pteridophytes is actually a Greek word. This pteridophyte word is actually a Greek word. In that, the pteron literally means feather, and phyton means the plant. That is the plant which looks like feather. Right, if you observe this particular pteridophyte in this picture, its leaves look like a feather of birds. Okay, and that is why this name is given to this particular group of the plants. That is the one which showing the feather like leaves. Right, so the pteridophyte is the Greek word, and the Greek word in the Greek word, the pteron literally means the feather, and the phyton means plant. That is the plant which is showing the feather-like structures. Okay, this name was originally given to these groups of the plants which have the well-developed frond-like leaves. Okay, you can observe this. These are the frond-like leaves are there, and that is why this name, that is the pteridophytes, is given to these particular plants. Now, these pteridophytes are the cryptogams. Of course, they are the lower plants. Okay, we are lower plants generally described as the cryptogams, and this is also the name of our chapter. That is the cryptogams, which is nothing but the lower plants, but which have the well-developed vascular tissue. This is very much important. What they possess? They possess the vascular tissue. In the lower plants, that is in a cryptograms, we have studied the group of algae as well as of the bryophyte. But in both the groups, you do not find any type of the vascular system. Vascular system is typically made up of the conducting tissues, that is called as the xylem and the phloem. Xylem and phloem typically constitute this vascular system, and the xylem is responsible for transportation of water inside the plant body, and the phloem is responsible for the transportation of food. But all these structures, that is the xylem and phloem, is absent in the algae and the bryophytes, and due to this lacking, algae and bryophytes has to live inside or around the water. Water is always needed for their growth and development, because they cannot conduct the water inside their bodies. They has to absorb from their surrounding, and that is why algae and bryophytes typically require water bodies to grow. But in case of pteridophytes, what are pteridophytes? Pteridophytes are such a cryptogams which possess the vascular tissue. That is, they are the lower plants, but they possess the vascular tissue. That is xylem and phloem. They have well developed transportation system within their bodies. So within the cryptogams, if you consider the three groups, that is the algae, bryophytes, and the pteridophytes, out of them, algae and bryophytes do not have the vascular tissues, but the pteridophytes possess the vascular tissue. So they are famously called as the vascular cryptogams. What is the term? It is called, they are famously described as the vascular cryptogams. That literally means the cryptogams which possess the vascular system. So whenever we say vascular cryptogams, there is only a one word answer, that is called as the pteridophytes. Because in the gymnosperm and the angiosperm, in both these groups, we cannot consider them as cryptogams because they are not the lower plants, but they are higher plants, and that is why we take them to in the phanerogams. So gymnosperm and angiosperm being not the cryptogams, they cannot be explained as the vascular cryptogams. But on the other hand, the algae and the bryophytes also cannot be described as a vascular cryptogams because they are cryptogams, but they do not show any vascular system. So there is only one group of the plant kingdom which has the vascular system, and these are the cryptogams. That is the pteridophytes. That is why pteridophytes are famously described as a vascular cryptogams. That is such a lower plants which possess the xylem and the phloem. All right. So they are the first true land plants. Their meaning of their name is the feather-like plants, and they are the vascular cryptogams. Okay, all these points are the important points. Now consider the habitat. Majority of the living pteridophytes are the terrestrial. Observe this word, majority of them are terrestrial, that is, they are living on the land, and generally they prefer to grow in the cool, moist, and shady places like ferns, right? So cool, moist, and shady places are required for their growth and development. This shows that they were evolved from the plants like bryophytes, because as you know, bryophytes likes to grow in a moist, shady places, right? They like cool places, moist places, and shady places, and from these bryophytes, the pteridophytes also got evolved, and that is why they also show some kind of overlapping in the habitat of the bryophytes. That is, they also prefer cool, shady areas and the moist areas. And only one difference, we can differentiate between the bryophytes and pteridophytes by the presence of the root system. The very well developed root system is present in the pteridophytes, but it is typically absent in the bryophytes. Although their habitat looks very similar, but the first true land plants are the pteridophytes, because the bryophytes do not have true root system, and that is why they has to depend upon the surrounding water areas or the water bodies. Now, some members of the bryophytes were also aquatic. Okay, for example, see the azolla. Observe in this particular picture, this is an azolla, and this azolla is a pteridophyte, and it shows the aquatic habitat. That is, it lives inside the water. Then there is also the xerophytic habitat. Xerophytic habitat are those habitat which lives in a scarcity of water. That is, in a desertic condition. If there is a scarcity of water, we say that it is a xerophytic plant. If the plant is growing in a scarcity of water region, right? If the some plant is a desert plant, in such a case, we call that plant as a xerophytic plant. So the particular pteridophytic group also shows the xerophytic habitat members, which is called as the equisetum. Okay, equisetum is the example for the xerophytic plant in the pteridophytes. So they can live literally where there is a scarcity of water. This is very important because we cannot imagine the bryophyte living in the xerophytic condition. But the pteridophyte, on the other hand, they find their habitat in the xerophytic condition as well. That is, where there is a scarcity of water, where there is a desertic area. In such an area also, the pteridophytes typically grow. Okay, and for that we have the example of equisetum. Very important because they shows the aquatic habitat. Example for the aquatic habitat is the azolla. They shows the xerophytic habitat as well. Example for them is the equisetum, and they also show the epiphytic habitat as well. And as you know, epiphytic habitat is that habitat if the one plant, okay, if the one plant is growing on the another plant, okay, without harming that plant, then such a habitat is called as the epiphytic habitat. That is, some plants of the pteridophytes, they like to grow on the other plants, okay, on the body of other plants without harming them. So example for this is a Lycopodium squaresome. Okay, so when we talk about the habitat of the pteridophytes, it is somewhat similar to the bryophytes, but it is still different. In that case, we have the example of xerophytic and epiphytic plants. So the habitat of the pteridophyte is the cool, moist, and shady places. They are found in the aquatic habitat, they are found in the xerophytic habitat, and they also show the epiphytic type of habit. Okay, and for that, for each category, you have to remember the example. Okay, now consider the smallest pteridophyte known is the azolla. Okay, whatever the azolla is aquatic plant. Just we have seen, and in this particular picture, what you are seeing is the azolla plants. So azolla is the smallest pteridophyte known, which is an aquatic fern, of course, and the largest is the Scythia, which is also called as the tree fern. Very important word. It is called as the tree fern, and this picture is of the Scythia, and it is showing the tree habit, and that is why it is called as the tree fern. Right? Just like you will see the solid stem, there is a solid branching as well, and below they have the roots as well. So they exactly looks like a tree, and that is why they are showing the tree habit. And hence these Scythia plants are famously called as the tree fern. Okay, so aquatic fern, which is called as the Azolla, and the tree fern is called as the Scythia, are the smallest and the largest pteridophytes known. Okay, so the smallest pteridophytes is the Azolla, and the largest pteridophyte is the Scythia. All right. Now consider the pteridophytes exhibit the well defined heteromorphic alternation of generation. Now see, they are showing the alternation of generation. That literally means the gametophytic generation will alternate with the sporophytic generation. But the gametophytic generation and the sporophytic generation are typically different from one another. You can quickly judge that which one is the gametophytic generation and which one is the sporophytic generation. And that is why when we can easily distinguish between gametophytic and the sporophytic generation, we say that they are showing the heteromorphic alternation of generation, because they are showing heteromorph. Morph means form. Okay, that is they are showing different structure in the different generations. That is their gametophytic generation looks different and the sporophytic generation looks different, and that is why due to this difference, it is called as the heteromorphic alternation of generation. Okay, so heteromorphic alternation of generation is typically found in the pteridophytic plants, and the diploid sporophyte is the dominant phase of the life cycle. This is very important, because while we are studying the bryophytes, what we have said that the gametophytic generation, which generation? Gametophytic generation is the dominant generation in the bryophytes, while in the pteridophytes, the sporophytic generation is the dominant generation. This is very important, and the important difference between the bryophyte and the pteridophyte. That is, the bryophytes shows the dominant generation in the form of gametophytes, but the pteridophyte shows the dominant generation in the form of sporophyte. That is, sporophyte, the diploid generation, is the dominant generation in the pteridophytes. Okay, very important, because this distinguishes the pteridophytes from the bryophytes. Now, bryophytes being showing the dominant generation as the gametophytic generation, and pteridophytes showing the dominant generation as the sporophytic generation. Okay. Now, see, the sporophytic plant body is differentiated into the leaves, stem, and roots. See, of course, the sporophytic plant body is a dominant phase in the life cycle, and this body is differentiated into leaves, stem, and the roots. Okay, so whatever we are seeing in this particular picture, these are all sporophytic generations. Okay, so as a habit, when you observe any fern or any plant of the pteridophytes, what you are seeing actually is the sporophytic generation, because their gametophytic generation is a recessive generation, and it is short lived. What you see in the particular pictures, these are pictures are showing the sporophytic generation, which is differentiated into the leaf, stem, and root. That is, they show the presence of leaf, presence of stem, and presence of root in the sporophyte, while their gametophytic generation is very simple. Okay, so they show the heteromorphic alternation of generation, and their diploid sporophytic generation is the dominant generation, which makes them very different from the bryophytes, because bryophytes shows the gametophytic, that is the haploid generation, as the dominant generation. So when we study the bryophytes and when we study the pteridophytes, you should be able to compare, because if you remember the bryophytes, consider this is an Markensia. Okay, this is the Markensian thallus, and this was the gametophyte, and out of this gametophyte the sporophyte were created, and this sporophytic generation is nutritionally dependent on the gametophytic generation, because gametophyte can perform photosynthesis and provide food to the sporophytic generation, and this the sporophytic generation is only producing the spores, and it is short lived, and that is why we say the gametophytic generation is the dominant generation in the bryophytes. But what happens in the pteridophytes? When we consider the pteridophytes, the sporophytic generation, that is the diploid generation, is the dominant generation, and it is divided into the leaf, stem, and root. While on the other hand, the gametophytic generation of the pteridophytes is very short-lived, inconspicuous, and it is only there for the production of the gametes. So whatever you see as actual ferns or actual pteridophytes are the sporophytic generations. Okay. Now consider. See, the leaves are small and called as the microphyllus. See, there are two types of leaves were found in this particular pteridophytes. The first kind of leaves were called as the microphyllus, which is found in the equisetum. Okay, microphyllus, which literally means the small leaves. Okay, how you can remember this? Say, when we say the micro, M-I-C-R-O, micro, then it just like the microorganism, we are talking about something very small. So there are small leaves which are found in the pteridophytes. These are called as the microphyllus leaves. Okay, microphyllus literally means which are the small leaves, and for that we have example of the equisetum. While in the several groups of the plants, while in the higher forms, they shows the presence of large leaves, which are called as the macrophallus leaves. That is MACRO, macrophallus leaves, and these are the large leaves which are found in the adiantum with the simple with well developed petiole. Even they shows the presence of petiole. As you know, the stalk of the leaves, it is called as the petiole, and this petiole is also present in the pteridophytes. Okay, so before the pteridophytes, we never heard about the petiole because algae, bryophytes, they do not show the presence of well developed leaves, and if there are no leaves, there is no presence of petiole. But the pteridophytic plant shows the two types of the leaves, which is called as the microphallus leaves and the macrophallus leaves. Microphallus leaves are the smaller leaves, while the macrophyllous leaves are the larger leaves. The example for the microphallus leaves is the equisetum. Very important. Equisetum is the example for the microphallus leaves, while the adiantum is the example for the macrophallus leaves, which also possess the well-developed petiole there. Okay, so when we consider the leaves, when we talk about the leaves of the pteridophytes, this is very interesting because first time we are talking about the leaves in the plant kingdom. Because before that, when we study the algae and the bryophytes, in both these cases we do not find any types of leaves. But the leaves are first time present in the pteridophytes, and that is why we are considering leaves, and its two types which is present in this particular pteridophytes. That is the microphallus leaves and the macrophallus leaves. Microphallus leaves means the smaller leaves, while the macrophallus leaves are the larger leaves. For the microphallus leaves, you have the example of equisetum, okay, and for the macrophallus leaves, we have the example of a adiantum. Now observe this particular picture here. The whatever the leaves you are seeing is the microphallus leaves of the equisetum. Okay, this is the equisetum plant, and this is an adiantum plant which is showing the presence of well-developed petiole leaf. Okay, and larger leaf is there, and that is why it is considered as a microphallus leaves. Okay, now consider. See the stem. When we talk about the stem is usually branch. Okay, the branching is there on the stem. Okay, branching is present on the stem, and this branching may be monopodial or dichotomous. Monopodial literally means it is like this. There is a monopod, one single pod, and on this pod the branching is coming. Okay, and then we call it as a monopodial branching, or it may be dichotomous, like bryophytes. Like in dichotomous branching, what they show, they cut at the apex level like this, and they form the two branches. This is called as the dichotomous branching. So dichotomous branching and the monopodial branching both can be found in the pteridophytes, but the branches do not arise in the axil of the leaves. Okay, just like the bryophytes, the branches do not arise from the axil of the leaves. In many pteridophytes, the stem is represented by the rhizome. Okay, that is the lower pteridophytes. The ancient pteridophytes, their stem is actually represented by the rhizome. Okay, rhizome is a structure from which the roots are coming out, and this rhizome is also act as a stem in some of the pteridophytes. Okay, whatever the ancient pteridophytes are there, which maybe first developed from the pteridophytes, they shows the stems in the form of rhizome. Okay, so it will depend on which type of plants we are talking about in the group of pteridophytes, that how they will show, whether they are showing the typical stem or they are showing the rhizome. It will depend on which form we are talking about. If we are talking about the well developed, well advanced pteridophyte, it will show the well developed stem, and if we are considering the ancient or the on the evolutionary line the backward form, then it will show the rhizome. Okay, now consider. See, the roots are adventitious. Okay, what is the root system? Is the root system is adventitious. As you know, whenever we talk about the roots can be classified into the tap root system and the adventitious root system, right? In the adventitious root system, we have roots like this. There is a branching of the roots. Okay, generally these adventitious roots were found in the grass. Okay, whenever you take out the grass from the soil, you will see the adventitious root. That is, the many roots are coming from the one single point, and they are forming the branching. They are forming the group of roots. Okay, and when we talk about the tap root is like the single root, which is the solid root which is found in the trees. Okay, generally trees shows this typical root which is called as the tap root, and it's a single large root which is holding all the weight of the plant. Okay, and from this tap root, the primary root and the secondary roots are coming out. But whenever we talk about the adventitious root, these are loosely arranged roots, and they are spreading like the branches below the ground. So in the grasses, when you take out the grass from the soil, you will observe the adventitious root, and these types of roots were also present in the pteridophytes, because pteridophytes possess this particular kind of nature in which they are showing the adventitious type of nature, because their roots are showing typical branching, and they are not very much deeply connected into the soil. Okay, that is, they are not that much deep as compared to the gymnosperm or the angiosperms. Okay, now see, their roots are adventitious in nature. They may be monopodial or the dichotomous branching. Then internally, usually they are diarch. Okay, diarch. This word literally means they possess the two xylem strands. Okay, if any plant is possessing the two xylem strands, then in such a case we consider these plants as a diarch plants. Okay, now here what we have talked about, we have talked about the leaves of the pteridophytes, then we have talked about the stems of the pteridophytes, and then we have talked about the roots of the pteridophytes. Now first time we are discussing these all these structures because algae and the bryophytes do not possess these types of structures, but first time in the plant kingdom, that is the pteridophytes are the true land plants, and they shows the differentiation in their sporophytic plant body as the leaf, stem and root. And that is why individually we have to consider all these structures while studying the pteridophytes. All right, now consider the vascular tissues are present in the stem and roots. Okay, that is the stem part of the pteridophyte plus the root part of the pteridophyte possess the vascular tissues. That is, the xylem and the phloem are present in the stem, plus the xylem and the phloem are also present in the roots as well. So roots, while having the xylem and phloem, able to transport the water throughout the plant body, and it can also be able to receive the food material from, via the stem from the by using the phloem. So the well-developed vascular tissues, that is the xylem and the phloem, both are present in the stem and roots. Okay. Now see the xylem. It consists of the xylem and phloem. That is the vascular tissues are consist of xylem and phloem. While the xylem it consists of tracheids only. Now this is very much important, and the phloem has only the sieve tubes. See, very important, because whenever we consider the xylem structure and the phloem structure, we always find the four types of cells in each category. That is, four types of cells were found in the xylem and the phloem. Xylem is made up of the typical four types of the cells. One of them is the tracheids. Okay, one of them is the tracheids, and the phloem is also made up of the four types of cells, and one of them is the sieve tube cells. Okay, but all the three were absent in the pteridophytes. Rest of the three types of cells which are found in the phloem were typically absent in the pteridophytes. Also, the three types of other cells which are found in the gymnosperm and the which are found in the angiosperms are absent in the pteridophytes. So, what pteridophyte is possess is the vascular system, but it is very less developed. It is not that much developed. So, this anatomical feature will let you know that the bryophytic plants were got converted into the pteridophytic plant. Now, why we are saying that saying this very confidently? Because the bryophytic plants do not show any presence of the vascular system, and the vascular system were first time appeared in the pteridophytes. But this vascular system, that is the xylem and phloem, is not that much developed as compared to the gymnosperm. And gymnosperm also shows the presence of the vascular system, which is less developed as compared to the angiosperms. Okay, so angiosperms shows the highest degree of differentiation in the xylem and the phloem. So by this anatomical feature, you can judge that the gymnosperms are lacking behind the angiosperms, while the pteridophytes are lacking behind the gymnosperm, and the bryophytes are lacking behind the pteridophytes, while the algae is also lacking behind the bryophytes. So the whatever the vascular system which is developed in the pteridophytes, it is not that much developed, and the xylem is only made up of the tracheids. Okay, only one type of cell were found in this particular xylem. These are called as the tracheids, and the tracheids are the main conducting vessel in the pteridophytes. While the phloem is only made up of the sieve tube cells and not the other cells. That is, the parenchyma cells which are found in the xylem and the parenchyma cells which are found in the phloem are absent. Also, there are other two types of cells which are found in the higher plants. These are also absent in these particular pteridophytes. So, what they are showing is the pseudo type of the vascular system. Vascular system is present there, but it is not that much developed. It is, this xylem is only made up of the one type of cell which is called as the tracheids, while the phloem is only made up of the one type of cell which is called as the sieve tubes. So you can say that on the evolutionary line, the pteridophytes are evolving from the bryophytes. That is why we consider pteridophyte as the more advanced form when we compare them with the bryophytes. But they are still lacking behind the gymnosperm and the angiosperm in case of differentiation of the vascular tissue, that is the xylem and the phloem. Okay, so xylem and phloem typically do not differentiate between xylem and phloem is not very well differentiated in the pteridophytes, but what they show is the pseudo type of vascular system, that is the xylem and phloem, in which the xylem is only made up of the tracheids and the phloem is only made up of the sieve tube cells. Now see, when we talk about the stele, okay, when we talk about the stele, this stele is typically present in the pteridophytic anatomy. Now see, there is actually a topic which is called as the evolution of stele in the pteridophytes. So we have to go through the detail by using whole one lecture on this particular topic. So the evolution of stele is occurred in these particular pteridophytes, and it's a typical anatomical feature which is first time seen in the pteridophytes. Because in the bryophytes, when we study the bryophytic stem or the leaves, we find that we do not find any type of steel there. But this steel, it is found in the pteridophytes, and not one but the different kinds of steels were found in the pteridophytes, and that is why we have to study the evolution of steel in the pteridophytes. It is similar with that of the evolution of sporophyte in the bryophytes. It is like the steel is also comparable with the sporophyte because it is evolving, and many types of steels were found in the pteridophytes. Okay, so steel may be protosteel. It is one type of the steel which is found in the pteridophytes. Example for this is the Rhynia and the Lycopodium. Then there may be the Steel which is found in the Equisetum. Then there may be the polycyclic found in the Angioteres, while the cambium is typically absent, and they do not show any type of secondary growth. So different types of steels were found in the different types of the pteridophytes, and how they got evolved, for that we are going to take the one separate lecture. So here we only have to understand that the protosteel is found in the Rhynia, while the Steel is found in the Equisetum. Okay, or they may be polycyclic in case of the Angioteres, right? And most importantly, they do not show the presence of any cambium in their internal structure. As you know, cambium is the famous word in the botany, and this cambium is responsible for the secondary growth. So secondary growth, that is the increase in the width of the plant. This secondary growth can be easily found in the gymnosperm and the angiosperm. Whenever you see the angiospermic plant, for example, see the Mangifera indica. When you observe the Mangifera indica, that is the mango plant, you will see the secondary growth in its stem. Its stem is so huge that it can tolerate the weight of a 100 feet plant as well, right? So why this is happened? Because there is a presence of secondary growth. Secondary growth can occur in these particular forms, and that is why they can hold such a large amount of weight on the stem. But this cambium, which is responsible for giving the secondary growth in the plants, this cambium is typically absent in the pteridophytes. Pteridophytes do not show the presence of the cambium, and due to this they do not show any secondary growth. So whenever you see the stem of the pteridophytes, you will not see that much strong stem. It is just a primary stem made up of the simple tissues, and it somehow stands above the ground, and it will able to hold the little amount of the weight of the leaves. Okay, so why this happen? Because the cambium is absent in them, and that is why we consider on the evolutionary line the pteridophytes are lacking behind from the gymnosperm and angiosperm. Gymnosperm and angiosperm, on the other hand, they shows the presence of cambium, and there is a secondary growth in both of these plants. Secondary growth can be easily seen in the gymnosperm and angiosperm, but it is typically lacked in the pteridophytes. And as the algae and the bryophytes typically do not have the stem structure, and that is why there is no question of cambium. So first time the stem structure is found in the pteridophytes, but in that stem structure they do not show any cambium or in the stem or in the roots, and that is why there is no secondary growth in the stems and the roots of the pteridophytes. Okay, so very important point, that is they lack the cambium. Okay, so internally, when we talk about the internal structure of the pteridophytes, they possess the well-developed vascular system. That is they possess the xylem and the phloem. When we compare them with the bryophytes, we can say that they are more advanced, because in the bryophytes there were no xylem and phloem. But this xylem and phloem is not that much developed in the pteridophytes even. That is, their xylem is only made up of the trocheids, while phloem is only made up of the sieve tube cells. And they show the different types of steels in them, and they do not show the presence of cambium. Hence, there is no secondary growth found in the pteridophytes. Okay, now consider the classification. Now let's classify these particular pteridophytes. Okay, the division of the pteridophyta is divided into the 5 classes. Actually, there are 5 main classes in which the whole pteridophyta division is divided. Okay, now see, the first one is called as the Psilophytopsida. Okay, here P is the silent, and it is called as the Psilophytopsida. Then second, P is silent, it is called as Psilopsida. Then Lycopsida, then Spinopsida, and here P is silent, it is called as Pteropsida. So all these 5 classes where belongs to the pteridophytes division. Okay, and the division of the pteridophytes can be classified into the 5 classes. These 5 classes are namely called as the Psilophytopsida. Please remember the name, that is Psilophytopsida, Psilopsida, Lycopsida, Spinopsida, and the Pteropsida. Okay, all 5 names you have to remember carefully. Now let us consider how they are differentiating from one another. On the what basis the scientists have classified these particular plants into the 5 classes. Now consider them one by one. See, observe. First class is the Psilophytopsida. Now this Psilophytopsida, it's a group of the extinct pteridophytes. That means these pteridophytes are no more available to study. That these are completely extinct. They have gone. They are present in the ancient time, but what we have only the fossils of them now. So fossil form plants were found in this particular class, and there are no living members. and that is why we cannot study them in detail. Okay, so Coelophytopsida are the group of the extinct pteridophytes and most primitive vascular plants. So yes, we can say that because it's an extinct plant, and these will be the first plants, first land plants which has the vascular tissues, but they were extinct now. Okay, the plant body, that is the sporophytic, as you know, sporophytic plant body is the diploid plant body, was differentiated into the rhizome and the aerial branch shoots. Okay, there is a presence of rhizome. This area is called as the rhizome, and this area is called as the aerial shoot. So body is divided into the rhizome and the aerial shoot, and this is a rhinia. Okay, and this is a construction of the rhinia actually. Okay, we do not have the original picture of rhinia, and it's a construction of the rhinia, and this construction shows that there is a presence of the rhizome, and from the rhizome what is arising? The aerial shoot. Okay, no, not much differentiated leaves can be seen here. The roots were totally absent, that is the rhizome is present, but roots are not present in these plants. And the rhizoids were present, of course, and their plants were homosporous. Literally means they produce the only one kind of spores. Okay, only one kind of spores were produced by these rhinia, that is the by the member of the Coelophytopsida. So whenever we talk about the Coelophytopsida, first thing should be come to your mind that they were the ancient plant, and actually they were the extinct plants. Okay, so as they are the extinct plant and they are the ancient plant, we can clearly describe them as the most primitive vascular plants. Right, their body is not that much differentiated because these are primitive plants, not that much advanced plants in the category of pteridophytes, and that is why their body is just divided into the rhizome and the branch shoot. There is a branching shoot above here, and what we have below is the presence of the roots. Presence of the rhizome. The roots are typically absent and the rhizoids are only present. So now see, you can judge this by comparing these plants with the bryophytes, because bryophytes shows the presence of the rhizoids and not the roots, and in a very similar way the ancient or the primitive pteridophytes also shows the presence of the rhizoids and not the roots. So from these morphological features you can say that the pteridophytes were originated from the bryophytes, because bryophytes like feature were earlier seen in the primitive pteridophytes, and later these primitive features got converted into the advanced feature, that is the rhizoids got converted into the roots. Okay, so rhizoids which were primarily found in the bryophytes got converted into the roots in the pteridophytes. So this is how the evolution is occurring in a progressive way, that is structures are converting into the new structures, that is the old structure, that is the rhizoid which is found in the bryophytes is now getting converted into roots which is found in the pteridophytes. So the body of the sporophytic plant body is divided into the rhizome and the branch shoot. Roots totally absent. They are homosporous, that is they produce only one kind of spore. This is also important because homosporous were considered as a less developed as compared to the heterosporous, because in the heterosporous forms the two types of spores were formed, and this is considered as an advanced form. So all these features shows why these are plants are the primitive plants, and now they are the extinct plants, because the plant body is not that much developed. Okay, the rhizome and branch shoot is only present, roots are totally absent, homosporous nature. This all shows these plants are very primitive plants, and Coelophytopsida is the class of the pteridophytes which is the extinct class. An example for this Coelophytopsida is the rhinia. Okay, now consider the second one, that is called as the Coelopsida. Okay, what is the name? It is called as the Coelopsida. Okay, now see, these are the living pteridophytes. Of course their members found in today's world, these are the living pteridophytes. These are the most primitive living vascular plants. Okay, this is important because most primitive plants were the Phytocidopsida, but the living form, the most ancient living form of the pteridophytes belongs to the Coelopsida. Okay, please remember this because we have put here the living word. This is important because the ancient living member, it belongs to the Coelopsida. Okay, now the plant body, that is the sporophyte, is differentiated into the rhizome and the aerial branch shoot. So only the rhizome is present and aerial branching is there. Okay, and the roots are totally absent while the rhizoids are present. The plants are the homosporous. So all the characteristics are matching with the rhinia group, right? All these characteristics were found similar in the rhinia, but these rhinia are now the extinct species, but the Coelotum is the living species. This plant belongs to the Coelotum. This is an Coelotum, and this Coelotum is showing the typical ancient characteristics of the pteridophytic groups. Their body differentiation is there, but it is not completely differentiated as we can see in the advanced pteridophytes nowadays. Okay, so body is only with the rhizome and the aerial branch parts, roots are absent, rhizoids are present, and they were also the homosporous. That is only the one kind of spore are present by these particular plants which belongs to the Coelopsida. Okay, now consider the third group, that is called as the Lycopsida. Now it is the group of the living as well as of the extinct pteridophytes. That is, it contains the members of both. That is, the some of the extinct fossils were found, which shows the characteristics similar with the Lycopsida, and there are some living forms which can be studied largely under this particular class, that is Lycopsida. So living members are there, extinct members are there in this particular class called as the Lycopsida. See, the living pteridophytes are the small and herbaceous. They are small plants, herbaceous plants, and the extinct pteridophytes of this class were the large trees. This is important. The large trees were belongs to the Lycopsida were now gone. They were extinct. But what we find which belongs to Lycopsida are the small and herbaceous plant now. Now the plant body is differentiated into the root, stem, and leaves. Okay, this is important because the root, stem, and leaves differentiation can be found in this particular class of Lycopsida. Okay, so Lycopsida shows the presence of all these three structures. Before this class we have studied the two classes, but in that we have classified the whole sporophytic plant body in the form of rhizome, plus there is a presence of the branch shoot. Okay, so this is an ancient form, that is the branch shoot plus the rhizome, and this ancient form is got converted into the three structures, that is the root, stem, and leaves, and this root, stem, and leaves is typically found in the Lycopsida, right? So you can say that the Lycopsida is more advanced as we compare them with the previous two classes. Okay, so roots are present and they are adventitious in nature. Leaves like the appendages, leaves like appendages were formed in these plants. These are called as the sporophylls. Okay, leaves like appendages you can see in this particular picture. They shows the presence of leaves like appendages which are coming out of the sporophytic plant body. These are called as the sporophylls. Okay, these are sporophylls bear the sporangia in which the spores are formed. Okay, now see, the many the sporophylls aggregate together. Okay, that is, these sporophylls aggregate together to form a very compact structure. That compact structure is called as the stabili or the cone. So very much advanced structures can be found in this particular class which is called as Lycopsida. That is, the stabilus or cone even can be found in these particular plants, and the sporophytic plant body is differentiated into root, stem, and leaves as well. So more and more differentiation, more advanced types of the structures were found in these particular Lycopsida members. Plus these members shows the homosporous as well as heterosporous nature. That means literally some members are the homosporous members and some members are the heterosporous members. Okay, heterosporous members. Okay, so homospory and heterospory both are found in this particular Lycopsida. The example for this Lycopsida is the Lycopodium. Okay, so very much important, the third class of the pteridophyta is called as the Lycopsida. It shows the very well developed body, that is, the body is differentiated into root, stem, and leaves. It contains both the living form as well as the extinct form, and the roots are adventitious in nature. Presence of the sporophylls are there. Sometimes these sporophylls are coming together to form a compact aggregate structure which is called as the stabili or the cone. Now the members may be the homosporous or the heterosporous. That is, they may produce one kind of spore or they may produce two kinds of spores. So it will depend on which type of species we are talking about. Okay, and the example for this is the Lycopodium. Okay, very important. Now consider the fourth class which is called as the Spinopsida. Okay, these Spinopsida members are famously called as the horsetails. Okay, horsetails, this word you must have heard regarding the pteridophytes, and these horsetails are members belonging to the Synopsida. See, the plant body, that is the sporophytic plant body, is differentiated into root, stem, and leaves. Okay, so much developed roots is there, stem is there, and leaves are there, and the roots are adventitious in nature. Okay, the stem is ribbed and branched with the prominent nodes and internodes. So in the stem we find the prominent nodes and internodes, and there is a quick branching as well. Okay, and roots are very much adventitious in nature. All right. See, the stem bears the cones or the stabili at the apex. As you can see at the apex, you will see the cones or stabili. The presence of cones gives the horsetail name to this particular Synopsida members. Okay, because of this this tail look because of this stabili, this cone looks like the horsetail, and that is why these are famously called as the horsetail. Okay, the members of the Synopsida. Now, this horsetail-like appearance is there on the stem, and that is why they are called as the horsetail. And the members are maybe the homosporous or heterosporous. An example for this is the equisetum. Okay, equisetum is the example for this particular pteridophytes, and these equisetum are responsible. These equisetums belongs to the Synopsida. Okay, and these are famously called as horsetail. Why? Because they shows the presence of stabili at the apex of the stem, and this apex of the stem along with the stabili looks like the horsetail, and that is why we are calling them as a horsetail. Okay, horsetail members. An example for this is the equisetum. Okay. Now consider the fifth one, which is called as the Pteropsida. These are also called as the ferns. Okay. The members which belongs to the Pteropsida, these are also called as the ferns. And the plant body is differentiated into the root, stem, and leaves. Roots are adventitious. Okay. The stem is underground rhizome or the erect or a branch. Okay. That is the two types of stems can be found. That is the rhizome can be there, the underground rhizome can be there, or there can be the erect stem as well. Okay. It is covered with the many multicellular hairs. That is the stem possesses the hairs, multicellular hairs, okay, which are present on the stems. These hairs are present on the stems of the Pteropsida members, and these hairs are called as the ramenta. Okay, a very important word, you have to remember this. These are called as the ramenta, and these ramenta are nothing but the hairs on the body of the ferns, that is the plants of the pteridophytes which belongs to the Pteropsida class. Okay, so very much well developed new structures are found in these particular pteridophytes. See, the leaves are pinnately compound. Very important. Observe in this particular picture, the leaves are pinnately compound. Actually, there are two kinds of leaves when we study the morphology of the angiosperm: the pinnately compound leaves and the palmately compound leaves. Right? These pteridophytes shows the pinnately compound leaves because on the one petiole the many leaflets are coming, and that is why we say such arrangement is called as the pinnately compound leaves. So pinnately compound leaves are found, which is the very advanced characteristics, is found in the Pteropsida group of the pteridophytes. Okay. Now see, they are also called as the fronds. Okay. In other words, they were also called as the fronds. The members are homosporous or the heterosporous. Example is the Marsilia. Okay. Whatever you see in this particular picture is the Marsilia, and this Marsilia plant shows the pinnately compound leaves, and this is the very advanced feature found in the pteridophytes. Okay. So Pteropsida, you can say that it's the most advanced form in the pteridophytes, and all the ferns belongs to the Pteropsida. Now body, of course, divided into root, stem, and leaves. Roots are adventitious. Rhizome may be there, maybe erect stem is there. Ramenta like hairs on the stem are also present, multicellular hairs, and leaves are pinnately compound. Okay, and these are famously called as the fronds. Example of, and they may be the homosporous or heterosporous in nature. An example is the Marsilia. Okay, so all these are the five classes of the pteridophytes. Okay, all these five classes, please go through the details and please make the comparative chart for this, so that it will be easy at the time of examination to revise it. Okay, now let us consider the reproduction in the pteridophytes, how the pteridophytes got reproduced. Okay, of course there are three methods. There is a vegetative way of reproduction, there is a asexual way of reproduction, and there is a sexual way of reproduction. That is, all three kinds of the reproduction can be found in the pteridophytes. That is, there is a vegetative reproduction, asexual reproduction, and the sexual reproduction as well. See, the vegetative reproduction it takes place by the vegetative buds that were developed from the rhizome. Of course, observe, this is a rhizome, and the vegetative buds are coming out of this rhizome, and this vegetative bud got converted into the new plant. Okay, or by the fragmentation of the rhizome. If the rhizome got break at the certain point, this rhizome will grow into the new plant. So vegetative reproduction is nothing but the budding. Okay, vegetative buds were formed in these particular plants, and especially the rhizome part is used for this purpose. And this rhizome part, whether it is got break off from the parent plant, or it may contain one extra bud, and this extra bud may develop into the new plant. Just you can see in this particular picture, here is the one plant and here is the second plant coming out of the same rhizome. Same rhizome is there, but the two plants are coming from the same rhizome. So for the vegetative reproduction, which structure we find in the pteridophytes is the rhizome. Okay, and rhizome is responsible for giving rise for all these vegetative type of plants. That is the vegetative type of reproduction. Now consider the asexual reproduction. In the asexual reproduction takes place by means of spores. Okay, there is a formation of spores in the pteridophytes, and these spores are responsible for the asexual way of reproduction. Now see, these spores are born in the structure which are called as the sporangia. The development of the sporangia, maybe the leptosporangiate, these are two words are important. See, the leptosporangiate or the eusporangiate. See, the leptosporangiate, when we call it the leptosporangiate, is that when the sporangium were originate from the single cell. That is, if the single cell is responsible for the origin of the sporangium, then it is called as the leptosporangiate. And though if the sporangiate is originated from the group of cells, it is called as the eusporangiate. So asexual way of reproduction can be done by the spores which are found in some of the pteridophytes, and these pteridophytes can create their sporangiate out of the one cell, then it is called as the leptosporangiate, and it can be created out of the many cells or the group of cells, then it is called as the eusporangiate. Okay, so carefully you have to remember the difference between the leptosporangiate and the eusporangiate. Whenever you talk about the leptosporangiate, it is coming out of the single cell, and when you are calling it as a eusporangiate, it is coming from the group of cells. Okay, Now consider the spores are haploid. Of course, the haploid spores are there, and these haploid spores may be small or large in size, right? We have already talked about the homosporous and heterosporous condition in the pteridophytes, that the pteridophytes contains the two types of spores. They may be the small spores or the large spores. The smaller spores are called as the microspores. Of course, the word is micro, M-I-C-R-O. Micro stands for the smaller spores, while there are the larger spores which are called as the megaspores. So megaspores and microspores are there. Microspores are smaller in size, while the megaspores are larger in size. Okay, so megaspore and microspores are there. Microspores are generally smaller in size, and the megaspores are generally larger in size. And when both these two are present, we say that the species is heterosporic species, right? And if one of them is only present, then it is called as the homosporic species. Okay, that is one kind of spore, homospore, two kinds of spore, heterospores, right? The smaller ones are called as the microspore, while the larger ones are called as the megaspores. Okay, now consider the microspores and the megaspores are developed in a specialized structures which are called as the microsporangia and the megasporangia. That literally means the microspores are developed inside the microsporangia, and the megaspores are developed inside the megasporangia. Okay, megasporangia and the microsporangia are the two kinds of spores which are found in the microsporangia and the megasporangia. So the structures you have to carefully remember that the microspores grow inside the microsporangia, and the megaspores are growing inside the megasporangia. Okay, now consider the sporangia may be born on the either on stem on leaves. That is, these are sporangia structures which is responsible for the production of the spores. They may be born on the stem or the on the leaves. That is, it has two places to grow. First is the stem, and then second is the leaves. On the stem they may be terminal. Okay, that is on the terminal area of the stem they grow. In such a condition, we have example of the rhinia, because in the rhinia we find the terminal sporangia, or they may be lateral, that is in the lycopodium. And if they are born on the leaves, then they may be ventral or the marginal, as it is found in the teres and the adiantum, or it may be the dorsal side of the leaves, that is in case of Polypodiaceae family. Okay, so depending upon their position where the sporangia are born, in the different types of species, these sporangia take the different places to grow. In the rhinia, they are on the stem and they are at the terminal side. And on the stem on the lateral side, it is found in the lycopodium. And if they are growing on the leaves, they may be on the ventral side, then it is found in the teres, and they may be on the dorsal side, it is found in the Polypodiaceae members. Right? So depending upon their position, where the sporangia is coming, according to that, we have the different positions in the different species of the pteridophytes. Pteridophyte shows the presence of sporangia, but it is coming at the different places, and that is why the different types of plants shows the different types of places for the sporangia to grow. Okay. Now see in equisetum. See in the equisetum, these sporangia are born on the special structures which are called as the sporangiospore. So equisetum like pteridophytes create the special structure which is called as the sporangiospore, and inside the sporangiospore the sporangia were formed, and this constitute the whole cone. Okay. In the Marsilia, Azora and the Salvinia, the sporangia are produced in the sporocarp. That is, in these plant the special structure which is created, which is called as the sporocarp, and inside this sporocarp sporangia are produced. So different kinds of the species in the pteridophyte shows the different kinds of the structure for the sporangia. All right, you should be able to remember all these things with a particular kind of examples. Okay, now consider this: the sporangia are developed on the certain specialized leaves which are called as the sporophylls, or in the axils of the leaves. Okay, see where the sporangia develop on the leaves, these leaves are called as the sporophylls, and these sporophylls bearing the sporangia are scattered on the sporophyte. Observe this particular picture. This is the sporophytic picture, and all these sporangia are scattered on this particular sporophytic plant. So they whatever the specialized leaves which are called as sporophylls, they possess this sporangia. Okay, they possess the sporangia, and all the sporangias were scattered on the plant, sporophytic plant, or they may be restricted to the particular area of the sporophyte. That is, this kind of arrangement can also be found in the pteridophytes, that the sporangia may be developed all over the sporophytic plant, just like they are scattered, or they may came into the separate lateral area. Okay. Now consider, in many cases, that is like in the Lycopodium equisetum, the sporophylls form the compact structure which is called as the stobili. Of course, we have discussed that if the sporophylls are come together, these sporophylls form the compact structure, and then these compact structures are called as the stobili, which are found in the equisetum and the Lycopodium. Lycopodium and equisetum shows the presence of this stobili or the cone structure. Okay. Now consider this, the haploid spores. Okay, whatever the haploid spores are there, these haploid spore upon germination, okay, as they got germinated, okay, so whatever the haploid spores which are coming out of the sporophyte, consider this is a sporophytic plant body, and this sporophytic plant body, what they are having the sporangium, and this sporangium is producing the spores. Okay, now when the spores were produced, these spores will germinate to give rise the certain kinds of a special structure which is small, very much reduced and inconspicuous and independent plant called as the gametophyte or the prothallus. Very important. See, observe this. When this spore which is coming out of this sporophyte, this spore will germinate to form gametophyte. Now, how the gametophyte of pteridophyte is there? Gametophyte of the pteridophyte is a small structure. Observe this. This is a very small structure. Plus, it is very much reduced. That is, you will not find any stem, root, or leaves in this particular gametophyte. And it is inconspicuous, which literally means it is hard to identify. It is very small plant, it is hard to identify, and it is independent plant. It is very important because the sporophytic from the sporophytic plant, this gametophytic plant is independent plant, and it is green in color. It can photosynthesize, okay, and it can produce the gamete, but it is very small plant. This is called as the gametophyte or the prothallus. So whatever the spores which are coming out of the sporophytic plant body, these spores are germinate to give rise to the gametophyte. And gametophyte, how is the gametophyte in the pteridophytes? It is small, very much reduced, and is conspicuous, plus it is an independent structure. Okay, now consider this structure is called as gametophyte or the prothallus. Now see, in the homosporous pteridophytes, the prothalli are the monoecious, that is the antheridia and the archegonia on the same prothallus. This is very much important. Please understand this. If the homosporous pteridophyte is there, that is only one kind of spore is produced by the sporophyte. Then whatever the gametophyte is created out of this sporophyte, it will be the monoecious type of gametophyte. That is, antheridia and archegonia will be produced on the same gametophyte. That is, antheridia will born here and archegonia also born on the same gametophyte. If the homosporous pteridophyte is creating the gametophyte. In heterosporous species are always dioecious. That is, the microspore will give rise to the male prothalli, and the megaspore will give rise to the female prothalli. Okay, so male prothalli and the female prothalli were created in the heterosporous species, but in the homosporous species, they always create the monoecious prothalli. That is, the antheridium and the archegonium will produce on the same gametophyte. But in case of the heterosporous species, the male prothalli is created and the female prothalli is created. This male prothalli will produce the antheridium, and the female prothalli will produce the archegonium. That is the female structures and the male structures. So let us consider the next slide, that is the sexual way of reproduction. Now, once the gametophyte is produced, it will produce the male sex organ and the female sex organs, okay, which will fuse to form the zygote. Okay, now the sexual reproduction is the oogamous type of reproduction. See, the antheridia and the archegonia are developed on the prothalli. So whatever the gametophyte or the prothalli is got created out of these particular gametophyte or the prothalli, the male sex organ, that is the antheridia, and the female sex organ, that is the archegonia, were got created. Now see, observe this particular picture. This is an sporophytic generation. Okay, this is the sporophytic phase in which there is a rhizome. Okay, adult fern is there, and these are creating the sporangium. Okay, and the sporangium forming the spores, which are the haploid spores. Now we are talk about when these haploid spores germinate, give rise to the gametophyte, that is the prothalli. Observe, this is an prothalli, this is the gametophytic generation. Okay, this is gametophytic generation, and this prothalli, which is called as the gametophytic phase, this prothalli will produce the archegonium and the antheridium. Okay, so the antheridium is the male sex organ, and it is surrounded by the single sterile layer of the jacket. Okay, so observe this particular picture. This is an antheridium, and the antheridium is surrounded by the single layer jacket, and inside this antheridium what we have is the anthrozoids. Okay, and anthrozoids are the male sex organ here, and the egg which is formed inside the archegonium, it is called as the female sex organ. Okay, now consider the archegonium consists of the 4 vertical rows of neck cells. Okay, neck cells are there, 4 vertical rows of the neck cells are there, and 1 to 2 neck canal cells were there, and the ventral canal cell and the egg is also present. See, inside here what we have is the egg cell. So here we have the anthrozoids, and here we have the egg cell. So antheridium and the archegonium were produced on the female gametophyte. Sorry, the gametophyte. If it is a monoecious gametophyte, the both antheridium and archegonium produced on the same thalli. And if it is coming from the heterosporous pteridophyte, the male the Prothalli will give rise to the Anthridium, and the female Prothalli will give rise to the Archegonium. Okay, so how is the Anthridium? Anthridium is surrounded by the single layer of sterile jacket, while the Archegonium consists of the vertical rows of 4 rows of the neck cells. Okay, 1 to 2 neck canal cells are there, ventral canal cells are there, and the egg is there. Okay, now consider both the sex organs are developed on the same gametophyte. For example, Lycopodium and the Equisetum. That is, Lycopodium and Equisetum, in both these species, the gametophyte, the single gametophyte will produce both kinds of the sex organ on the same prothalli. Okay, or on the different gametophytes, for example in the Marsilia. So you can say that the Equisetum and the Lycopodium are the example of a monoecious condition, while the Marsilia is the example for the dioecious condition. Now hence these gametophytes are monoecious, that is the bisexual, or the dioecious, that is the unisexual. If it contains the both the sexes, it is called as monoecious, and if it contains only the one sex, either male sex or female sex, it is called as the dioecious condition, right? Now consider this. See, the anthrozoids are maybe unicellular, okay, maybe unicellular and biflagellate in the Selaginella, and they may be multiflagellate and the motile in case of the Equisetum and the ferns. Okay, so they may be multiflagellated. See, this is a very important difference between the bryophytes and pteridophytes. So whenever you talk about the bryophytes, what they show? They show the presence of anthrozoids who are biflagellated, while in the pteridophytes, the biflagellated as well as multiflagellated bryophytes were anthrozoids were found. So biflagellated unicellular anthrozoids were found in the Selaginella, and the multiflagellated anthrozoids were found in the Equisetum and the ferns. Okay, plus they are very motile because of the presence of flagella. Right? See, the anthrozoids were attracted towards the neck of the Archegonium chemotactically, very important, because chemical signals are there, and by using these chemical signals, the anthrozoids got attracted towards the neck cells of the Archegonium. See, by certain substances like the malic acid. Okay, malic acid like substances were released by these neck cells, and due to this malic acid, these anthrozoids got attracted towards the Archegonium. Okay, see, present in the mucilaginous substance formed by the degeneration of the neck canal cells and the ventral canal cells. So whenever there is approaching of the fertilization, the neck canal cells and the ventral canal cells both got degenerate, and they create the mucilage substance, mucilage like substance. The main ingredient of this mucilaginous substance is the malic acid, and this malic acid acts as a chemical signal for the anthrozoids to come towards the Archegonium. So very important that the neck canal cells and the ventral canal cells are degenerating here, and what they are creating the mucilaginous structure, and this mucilaginous structure, it contains the chemical which is called as the malic acid, and this malic acid is responsible for the attracting the anthrozoids towards the Archegonium. All right, now consider this. The female sex organ, that is the Archegonia, at maturity produce the female gamete, that is called the egg, and the egg is non-motile. Of course, the egg is non-motile. The egg is present inside this particular Archegonium, and it is non-motile. It is formed inside the female sex organ, that is called as the Archegonium. Okay, see, the water is essential for the fertilization. Very important, because similar on the lines with the bryophytes, as the bryophytic reproduction is also dependent on the water, same is true for the pteridophytic reproduction. Okay, the pteridophytic reproduction is also dependent on the water, and the anthrozoids will swim in the water to reach the Archegonium. Okay, and this is the very basic reason why the bryophytes and the pteridophytes are not occupied much of the habitat on the earth. Okay, because they always require some way or other way the water to complete their life cycle. So although the pteridophytes are the first true land plants, for their fertilization purpose, they also require water, and that is why sometimes the pteridophytes were also called as the amphibians. Okay, because they also require the water for their survival. But to differentiate between the bryophyte and pteridophyte, the bryophytes were famous for the amphibians of the plant kingdom. Okay, so whenever you talk about the amphibians of the plant kingdoms, we are generally talking about the bryophytes. Okay, on the other hand, the pteridophytes were also given one interesting name, that is called as the reptiles of the plant kingdom. Why we are calling it reptiles of the plant kingdom? Because these the reptiles are the first group in the animal kingdom which came out of the water and successfully survive on the land. Okay, and this is also true for the pteridophytes, because they are first time come out of water and successfully live on the land, and that is why the pteridophytes are famously called as the reptiles of the plant kingdom, or the snakes of the plant kingdom. Okay, snakes and the reptiles are interchangeably used, and they are called as the reptiles of the plant kingdom or the snakes of the plant kingdom. Okay, so while describing the bryophytes, we generally use the amphibians of the plant plant kingdom, and when we describe the pteridophyte, we say they are the reptiles or the snakes of the plant kingdom. Okay, so as the fertilization occurs there is a formation of zygote, also called as the oospore, which ultimately develops into the well-developed sporophyte. And as you know, sporophyte is the diploid phase in the life cycle, which is the dominant phase in the life cycle, and it is responsible for the production of the spores. Okay, and it is differentiated into the root, stem, and the leaves. So whatever the zygote is created out of the gametophyte, the gametophyte first will produce the male sex organ, then there will be the female sex organ. After the fusion, there will be the zygote, and now zygote is creating the particular new sporophyte. So this is how the alternation of generation occurs in these particular pteridophytic plants. Okay, now see, the fertilized egg first divide transversely, then vertically, and then there is another cross wall form the quadrant stage, which will produce the leaf, foot, and the root. Okay, so there is a single zygote, there is a transfer division, there is a vertical division, quadrant is formed, and after the development of this quadrant, the root, stem, and leaves were got created, and the whole new sporophyte were created out of this particular zygote. Okay, now consider the pteridophyte shows the regular feature of the alternation of generation. That is, the dominant phase of the life cycle is the diploid sporophytic generation, while the short-lived phase of the life cycle is the haploid gametophytic generation. Now, please understand this, how this happened. See, whatever we see as a root, stem, branching, and leaves is the sporophyte. Okay, this is a sporophyte. This sporophyte will produce the spores, whether it's a megaspore or a microspore. Okay, it will produce the spores, and these spores will give rise to the gametophyte, which is the short inconspicuous. This gametophyte will produce the male gamete and the female gamete. Male gamete is the antheridium, female gamete is the archegonium. Antheridium will produce the anthrozoids, archegonium will produce the egg. After the fusion of anthrozoid and the egg, there will be the formation of zygote, and this zygote will got converted into the sporophyte. So sporophyte will again produces the spores. Spores will create the gametophyte. Gametophyte will create the male and female sex organ, that is the antheridium and archegonium. Antheridium and archegonium will produce the anthrozoids and the egg. After their fusion, the zygote is formed. Again, zygote is converting into the sporophyte. So this is how the alternation of generation occurs. But the sporophytic generation, that is the diploid generation, is the dominant generation. And why we are calling it dominant generation? Because it is long-lived. Okay, it live for a very long time, while the gametophytic generation is very short-lived. As the gametes were produced, this gametophyte dies here. Okay, so short-lived gametophyte is here and long-lived sporophyte is here, and that is why the diploid stage, which is called as the sporophytic stage, is the dominant phase in the life cycle of the pteridophytes. So this is how the pteridophytes alternates its sporophytic generation with the gametophytic generation. Okay, that is the diploid sporophyte and the haploid gametophyte. Diploid sporophyte and haploid gametophytes are totally different morphologically and genetically. Okay, that is, they morphologically very different, and hence we rightly describe them as a heteromorphic alternation of generation. Okay, because structurally they are very different, and genetically they were also very different. Okay, and these diploid sporophyte and the haploid gametophyte are alternating with each other, and hence we describe their alternation of generation as a heteromorphic alternation of the generation. Okay, so this is all about the pteridophytes. That is the introduction to the pteridophytes. So this is all about this topic. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video. Please like this video, share this video with your friends who are studying the botany, and if you haven't subscribed to the Botany Capsule channel yet, please subscribe to the Botany Capsule channel for UPSC examination. Again, thank you very much for giving your time. See you in the next video lecture. Thank you.